Establishing central dominion immediately, the pawn's advance influences crucial squares and opens diagonal lines for future development. Paving the way for the queen and bishop, this solidifies the center's influence, opening a flexible path for development. Securing central space and challenging black's pawn structure opens avenues for aggressive development. Developing the knight here flexibly prepares for pawn breaks and controls central squares, a prudent step in this queen's pawn opening. Developing a knight to its most natural square, this piece now eyes the central squares and prepares for further queenside expansion. Targeting the pinned knight creates immediate tactical ripples across the center. Targeting the b7 pawn immediately creates tactical headaches for black. Challenging the center immediately, black aims to disrupt white's queenside pressure and seize active piece play. Opening the center promises active piece play, but be mindful of potential pawn weaknesses. Developing the knight to a more central square reinforces the pawn's attack and prepares for potential counterplay. Probing the queen's advanced position, this move immediately threatens to disrupt black's development by pinning the knight. The queen strategically reorients, creating dynamic counterplay and challenging the queenside pawn structure. Sacrificing the bishop opens lines, creating dynamic play and potentially disrupting black's kingside defense. Opening the g-file creates immediate attacking potential for black's king, though at the cost of a weakened pawn structure. Reinforcing the knight's central presence, this piece prepares to support a potential kingside expansion while simultaneously eyeing weaknesses in black's pawn structure. Reclaiming the pawn opens up intriguing attacking possibilities along the c-file for black. Gaining crucial queenside space, this pawn push discourages black's bishop while preparing a solid pawn structure. Exchanging bishop for knight leaves black's king exposed and weakens the dark squares around it. Solidifying central control and preparing for kingside development, this move aims to resolve the structural imbalances caused by the recent exchanges. Expanding queenside space without immediate danger grants control over critical dark squares. Developing the bishop now opens lines for an aggressive kingside assault, preparing to exploit black's weakened pawn structure. Aggressively occupying the g-file, the rook hints at kingside pressure, potentially overlooking central development. Securing the monarch signals a commitment to solidifying the central position amidst the arising complexities. Shifting the bishop to c7 prepares to contest the open c-file and supports a potential kingside pawn storm. This knight aims to dominate the weakened dark squares around black's king, creating immediate tactical possibilities. The queen retreats, potentially eyeing the h4 square or reinforcing the queenside's pawn structure. Unleashing a queenside blockade, white aims to cramp black's cramped king's attack. Shifting the rook to g6 introduces attacking possibilities, though it temporarily weakens the pawn shield around the king. Pushing the pawn forward now seizes more territory, cramping black's kingside development and restricting their pieces. This daring thrust explodes into white's center, aiming to shatter its pawn structure and open critical lines for black's pieces. Opening that central file creates immediate attacking prospects. Liberating that bishop clears the c-file and offers a pawn to potentially disrupt white's central control. Activating the rook on the central file exerts pressure, preparing to exploit any weaknesses in black's pawn structure and king safety. Recapturing the pawn stabilizes the queenside, but leaves black's king feeling rather exposed amidst the pawn structure. Targeting the queen's retreat squares, this knight aggressively eyes the weakened queenside and attempts to disrupt black's coordination. The king abandons its shield, exposing critical diagonals and inviting aggressive piece play. Asserting presence on the open c-file, white aims to pry open black's defenses and exploit the compromised kingside structure. Asserting central control, the bishop redirects to a square now less attacked, preparing to challenge white's queenside expansion and potentially support a queenside counterplay. Opening the e-file for the rook dramatically intensifies pressure on black's still undeveloped queenside, and forces a difficult decision regarding the compromised pawn structure. This knight repositioning aims to challenge White's dominant central knight and potentially disrupt the attacking formation. Seeking to exploit Black's weakened kingside pawn structure, White aggressively pushes forward, aiming to create open lines and unleash attacking potential. Instantly challenging the misplaced knight, this counterthrust aims to disrupt White's imposing pawn chain and open avenues for counterplay. Unlocking the kingside pawn structure is the aim, preparing to exploit weaknesses. Unleashing a pawn thrust to seize central initiative, Black challenges White's pieces and opens lines for counterplay. Expanding queenside space, this pawn push aims to disrupt Black's structure and potentially gain a passed pawn. Reclaiming that central square allows the knight to potentially attack the vulnerable queenside pawns and support a breakthrough. Shifting the queen aims to exploit the weak kingside pawn structure and prepare for aggressive pawn pushes. The king vacates its exposed central position, seeking refuge and preparing to connect the rooks for defensive duties. Unleashing a pawn storm, White boldly opens the f-file, creating dynamic attacking potential against Black's somewhat exposed king. Unleashing the rook offers dynamic counterplay and targets White's slightly exposed king. Knight repositioning aims to exploit weaknesses created by Black's pawn structure. Retreating the knight offers no solace, merely surrendering kingside initiative and inviting further pressure. Exploiting the pinned knight opens a decisive path to the king.